Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show, where you'll find health and fitness inspiration, motivation, and information shared in 15-minute episodes. Tune in while getting a move on to make leading and enjoying the benefits of a healthy lifestyle almost too easy. It's the Fit 15. And now your host, Catherine Basu.
Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show. I'm your host, Catherine Basu. Happy Monday if you are tuning in the day this episode is set to go live. And welcome back to those of you who listened to Friday's episode with my guest and fitness expert, Makeba Edwards. Today's episode is a continuation of my chat with her with a focus on running. So Makeba and I on Friday talked about, and she debunked 3 fitness myths and shared where you can figure out if something you have heard from a friend is actually advice you should follow, whether it comes to fitness advice or nutrition advice. She shared some great resources. So definitely go back and check out that episode if you missed it. And for the runners, I'm excited to share some insights from Makeba today. So little background on Makeba before we dive into today's episode. Makeba Edwards has her master's in kinesiology and is a corrective exercise specialist. She's spent over 17 years working in the health and fitness industry. Her passion and love for fitness began at a young age on the island of Antigua, where she grew up. Makeba's master's degree in kinesiology has an emphasis in sports performance, and she's also a Vivo barefoot running technique master coach and has presented continuing education content in group fitness and personal training. She teaches multiple group fitness formats, including bar, boot camps, and several pre-choreographed formats. Makeba, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you back as my guest again and to chat running with you.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so today we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, running.
Yes.
And we decided to focus it because this is something I have a lot of listeners who are beginning exercisers and may or may not be beginning runners, because I try to,
Gotcha.
point them in that direction.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So one thing I had to learn the hard way as a runner is that you can't just doing a lot of miles is not the answer. So can you talk about that from more of a scientific background and what we should be doing and why with our running?
Yeah, and you know what? And one thing I like to do is kind of take it from the perspective of safety as well, just because
Sure.
I'll give you a little background. Runners are probably, the runners become highly injured. There's a high percentage and rate of injury amongst runners, and sometimes it's doing too much too soon, or maybe too much volume, like you just said, like running too many miles.
Mm-hmm.
So really, especially if you're a beginning runner, and since that is your population here, you have to be progressive about how you start. Okay. The goal of yes, you have a great goal of, I want to run, I want to be active, but take it in increments. It's really important to be safe when it comes to that, and being progressive with your running load and volume and duration. So perhaps starting off with maybe 30 minutes, if that's manageable for you. That's actually a good 20 to 30 minutes is actually a good place to start. And maybe moderately. You don't have to run maybe 3 miles at once. Maybe try a mile or 2, and pace yourself and start there. And then from there, you want to give yourself a moderate increase, and a safe increase is from scientific research is about a 10% increase in intensity or duration. That means the amount of volume that you're doing in running, and a 10% increase is safe. And depending on your background, your athleticism, and what you're capable of doing, you may decide to go a little more, but ultimately that 10% increase is a great safe way to begin. So, and the other thing for safety is just making sure that maybe kind of read a bit, get some information about how to start running. Obviously, you're putting one foot in front of the other, yes.
Right.
But at the same time, it's really important to understand how to run effectively and how to run properly, and training your body in such a way that you're strengthening the different muscles of your body that you're using in order to run effectively and efficiently.
Very good. No, I like that. And so how do we go about trying to prevent injury if that's a concern for runners?
Well, what I would say is reduce injury, because injury is something that can happen.
Right.
So I would say with reducing injury, one, it's really important to understand that It's not about running and doing more running and more running. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have a balanced routine. And this is just for any kind of activity that we do, or any, anything we do in life. It's really about balance. So if running is your primary source, or sorry, your primary activity for cardio fitness, why are you running? What's your goal? That's the first thing you want to start off with. Are you running for a marathon? Are you running for a half marathon? Are you trying to start running for marathons? Or are you simply looking for weight loss? Or you simply just love running for the feel of it?
Mm-hmm.
So first, assess your goals. What's your objective with what you're doing? Obviously, if you're someone who is an avid runner and it's recreation and you just love running, the one thing I always say that you don't want to run every single day and run just a large number of miles every single day, because what you do is you make yourself more susceptible to injury. And there's a lot of factors that place you at risk for injury. And it's not just running a lot of miles. It could be like your structure of your feet, your posture, any previous injuries. These are all different factors that could lend to injury.
Mm-hmm.
So creating balance in your workout, adding maybe a strength training component to your routine. And I know a lot of runners tend to shy away from strength training. And it's not to say that you have to lift like a bodybuilder, but what it does is it allows you sort of that ability to cross train, if you may. That's a term that's been used a lot in the past, just cross training, or placing some variation, or adding different modalities or formats of training. So whether it's maybe doing HIIT workouts, or doing a boot camp, or perhaps maybe doing a different type of cardiovascular activity, having that variation will allow you to take a load off those muscles that are constantly being stressed in running.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in running, we tend to run, it's a forward and backward movement. So all those different muscles and joints that are involved are going to get taxed and overloaded when we're doing that. So when we add other exercises, like maybe yoga in our routine let me be careful with saying this, because yoga is not just about stretching, but it does
Sure.
have that component to it, which definitely helps with improving your joint mobility and mobility.
Mm-hmm.
So incorporating things like yoga in your routine, dynamic stretching, will help to improve your joint function.
Hi friends, it's Catherine. If you are using this episode for your out and back walk and only have 15 minutes, we're 7.5 minutes through the episode, so you want to turn around now. All right, back to the episode.
Like I said, incorporating things like HIIT workouts or boot camp workouts, just variations. It helps with your performance and it helps with conditioning, so that when you do go back to running, those muscles have recovered, and now you can go back to your running and feel effective in your running program. The other thing that I always say is to be mindful of your running form, and that can go so many different ways when I say that. And people can think a lot of different things, but in terms of running form, I'm just going to talk about the function of your body in terms of the joints, in terms of your core, and those different areas, because there's an adage in the industry that says, if you have proper function in your core and those muscles, you have proper function in your distal ends, meaning your arms, legs, those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So having proper running form and function, and being able to hold yourself in proper position as you're running is going to help with the function of the other muscles that are responsible for running, your joints, your hip, your knee, and your ankle joints, and your feet. So those things will definitely help.
No, that's great. And do you find that, are there any like certain exercises we should try to include, or maybe muscle groups we should try to look at when we go into this strength training journey, or looking at our flexibility, or looking at different yoga poses that would help runners for common running injuries?
Oh man, there's so many things that you can do. I mean, it's not like a one size fits all
Sure.
specifically, but one thing I would say is definitely working on hip mobility is one area
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely important, as far as running goes. Ankle mobility as well. Specific exercise, I have to really think about that.
Sure.
Obviously, there's the runner's lunge, which is
Mm-hmm.
one, you're on your knees. It's kind of difficult when you're on podcast
Yes, right,
to
to show
describe
you.
it to describe it accurately. But different exercises that's going to help improve hip mobility and also stability of the joints, and when I say stability, I mean those joints that are going to have to remain stable while you're running. For instance, your knee joint. Your knees have a certain amount of rotation in it, not very much, very, very minimal. But
Mm-hmm.
the knee is subject to what's going on at the ankle and the hip. All right. So if your hip and your ankle muscles, or your ankle joints rather, are functioning correctly and you're incorporating exercises that's going to help with the flexibility or range of motion of those joints, then it will definitely help with knee stability. All right. So I can probably send you some information on just different exercises that you can
Sure.
probably include. But ultimately, especially when we're looking at the lower extremity, because that's what tends to suffer with running, is you want to make sure that you're working on the proper stability in the stable joints and proper movement and mobility in the mobile joints, in this case, your hip and your ankle. So that's going to be essentially important.
And so that, that would mean that sometimes runners, they say they have a knee issue, but it might not be the knee
I
that's the
know.
source of the problem, right?
No. It's so many things. I mean, if it's the knee, it could be maybe a ligament, meniscus. It could be something that's going on in that knee itself and the tissue in the knee. But also, you have to remember, there's so many joints and ligaments and tissues that attach to the knee. Your hamstrings, your quadriceps, your IT band, which is that fascial tissue along the side of the body. It's not a muscle, just so people know the IT band.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's fascia.
Yep.
It's a tissue that kind of goes from the hip down to the knee. And what happens is that, like I said, that constant moving in that forward direction creates stress on those joints. So what happens is the muscles, because there's overuse, will the joint will now suffer, the knee joint specifically will suffer as a result of that overuse of those muscles, and then overuse of the joint itself, ligaments and those. So yeah, it truly is about kind of finding that balance. One thing I always say, and I actually have an article that's coming out on reducing risk of injury in runners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and one of the things I talk about is assessing imbalances in your posture. Because if
Mm.
your posture is not, if in standing your posture is not effective, meaning you're not in ideal posture, and let's face it, nobody really has perfect posture. But
Right.
essentially what I'm saying is, if those muscles are not working correctly, or we like to say firing correctly in the industry, that means that in posture, just to hold you upright, it's going to make it worse when you add the pounding that you have with running, because now you're hitting the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And now you have all these forces that are acting on the joints, and now that's where the injury comes about. So one thing is important, to have good postural balance, making sure that those muscles, like I said, comes back to improving mobility or joint range of motion, including things like stretching into your routine. And it's not that stretching is going to prevent injury, because the science has shown that it's not necessarily that stretching prevents injury. But what will happen is, in improving joint range of motion and from stretching, it helps to improve function, and therefore you can say that it will definitely help in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's
That's
one thing leading to another, rather than it being the prevention, so to speak.
right, right.
All right. Yeah.
And then what do you think about foam rolling for runners or for anyone?
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. Oh man, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, foam rolling, which is basically what we call self-myofascial release.
Mhm.
Basically, it releases the fascia, and fascia is something I don't want to go into fascia too much right now.
Sure, sure.
But what it does is, it's sort of like a massage, So it's basically kind of releasing the tension in the tissue. So yes, foam rolling is absolutely something that you definitely want to do. And here's the other thing. And this sounds so simple, but I'm not gonna be honest with you. It rest and recovery.
Sure.
No, seriously, because the thing is, what I've noticed, and I have a lot of colleagues that run marathons and ultra marathons, and
Yeah.
a lot of times I get this from maybe one of my colleagues, like, oh my gosh, I have this pain in my knee, or this is happening, or this is happening, but yet still they run. But that's just the reality. Oh, I feel, oh, let me just run it off, or let me just kind of work it out. No, because what you're doing is you're adding insult to injury. If there's something that's, unless it's just muscle soreness, if you're
Right.
feeling pain that's unusual, sharp pain, anything that's not the norm in your running, that's a sign of dysfunction, deterioration, or overuse.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't address it, you're just going to make it worse. And then you're not going to be able to do the thing you love, which is running. So as simple as it may seem, rest and recovery and self-care, it is absolutely essential, because you do not want to run already injured. It just, and we should know this, but the reality is some of us still do it, I'm gonna lie.
I know. No, it's a good. I met someone at a race I was running, and he wasn't able to run, and he said, he looked at
Mhm.
his running journal and he saw that something was off with his hamstring, and then like a day or two later, he ended up pulling it, and that's why he ultimately wasn't able
There
to
you
run
go.
that race. And he said, yeah, he should have
Hmm.
just known, but so
Exactly, yeah. And it's just us as human beings, we don't want to give up, and we have this determination. And runners, I admire runners. I'm gonna be honest with you. I run. I say that very lightly. I run,
yep,
but
yep.
I'm not an elite runner, and I'm not an avid runner. And I admire those people who can run for 3, 4, 5. I have friends who run 6, 7, 8 miles. Like, oh yeah, I just went for an easy 7 mile run. I said, what? You went for what? And me, I'll run like 2.5 to 3 miles, and that's enough for me, because it's just
Mhm.
not my thing, so to speak. But what really struck me, because I didn't start running until I was about 20, 24 or 25,
Yep.
and I'm 39 now. And honestly, when I think of running, and I started doing research into running, and learning more about the different injuries, I just had this curiosity about, why are so many runners injured? Why
Yep.
what's going on? So there's so many factors to consider, and I still have that keen interest. That's why I'm always writing stuff about running and researching, and because I just have a keen interest in biomechanics and understanding why certain things happen in the body, and this is just one area that's just bugging me, and I really need to know more about. so and if I can help in any way, to give information, that's what I want to do. So
Yeah. No, I'm definitely
mm.
excited to see your next article. And that's coming out through ACE as well, or
It is, yeah. I'm not sure when. It should be coming out in the coming months.
okay.
But it definitely covers a lot of the things that I'm talking about in a little more detail. And the key thing I say with your running routine is don't run and run more,
Right.
because that's not going to help your performance, and it's not going to help your function. You run, yes, and you love running, but you have to balance that with additional variation in your programming, so that you can balance the work of those different muscles. So,
Mhm.
and the hamstrings and glutes and all these different muscles tend to, of course, and the shins, the Achilles, those areas tend to suffer just because of the movement. So add variation. Don't be afraid to add maybe 2 days of resistance or weight training to your program. And like I said, you don't have to train like a bodybuilder, right?
Mhm.
It's just about adding some different variation into your program, so you're using different muscle groups, and you're creating balance in your workout, so that and allowing, and this can be a form of recovery as well, like doing some strength training. And I said again, I preface, I say again, doesn't have to be overdoing it, but doing some strength training can be a form of recovery, and doing other modes of training can be a form of recovery from your running. But we
Mhm.
just, and also, get a running coach, get someone who understands the dynamics of adding miles, and varying and progressing the load in your running, so that you understand how to do that safely. Or even read quality articles. And like I said, as I spoke about, I think in the previous podcast, where I talked about just different areas to find quality information, and how to kind of weigh that information, and learn about it.
Yeah, no, of course. Well,
Mhm.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming back on the show and giving me an excuse to
Absolutely.
talk more about running.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thanks so much, Makeba. And we'll share all the links, but
Yeah,
any
sure.
shout outs you want to give to your social media, where the best place to find you might be, and all
Oh,
that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you have questions, you're welcome to email me at fitpro, gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at makebaedwards.fitpro, and then Twitter at fitpro. So
Awesome.
yeah, you can reach me there. And then I also write for for ACE, the American Council on Exercise. I write some of the expert articles, and I write stuff there as well. And there's some fun articles I've written there, as well as some other pros. There's a lot of information there, so I just get on there and just check it out.
Yeah, I know. I love finding their stuff, and often they'll send us things that were published a while ago in a given newsletter. So it's a good
Hmm.
reminder to just keep looking and digging a little deeper, because there are a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
good resources there.
yeah, yeah. They try to cover quite a bit of information. So yeah, absolutely, yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you at the
I do.
conference soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Thanks for listening to the Fit 15. For show notes and more, visit fitarmadillo.com/podcast. See you next time.
Hi, friends. It's Catherine. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Makeba, and do not forget that Makeba and I chatted last week, so make sure you go back and check out that episode if you missed it, to make sure you are not following some of the common fitness myths and know where to go to get your fitness facts. You may have noticed as Makeba and I ended there that we mentioned we're excited to go to this thing called Idea World, which is a fitness conference that some call the Super Bowl of fitness. It's a really big deal in the industry, and I'm going to be attending it later this month. Makeba will be there. Obviously, I love the fact that she said she would love to be back on the podcast, so definitely send any topics or questions you have that you would like me to ask Makeba to get her back on. But if you'd like to check out the conference page and you have any presenters that you're reading about and you'd like to have them on the podcast, let me know, because I'd be happy to approach them during my conference time and try to get them on the show. I will be attending primarily the Nutrition and Behavior Change Summit days, so that will be my main focus, but I'm always excited to try to bring on more guests to help you out. So keep me posted on what you want to know about, and you can always go to the show notes page, fitarmadillo.com/podcast, to submit a question or topic or guest you'd like to hear more about. So I hope you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes this week, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow if you do. Bye.